Sure.
Okay, wonderful. So, welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Andre Bright, and I am going to be talking you through this particular webinar, which is called Coaching Yourself. Um, 3 secrets for coaching yourself to achieve absolutely anything. And this is targeted towards creatives, right? So, me myself as a creative, I've recently gone through into the coaching space, and there are certain things that I'm learning that apply directly, which I use to my own coaching others, but then also coaching myself. And those are the things I'm going to be teaching today. So let's get it on. So at the end, there's a free gift, right? I'm putting this all out now, out into the open, so you know it's coming. So there's going to be an offer at the end, but it's going to be dope, trust me. Um, but that's going to be for those who are available at the very end of the session. So make sure you stick around for that. Welcome, Manny. Welcome, Fidel. Welcome, everyone else that's coming up. D, Phoenix, Patrice in the house. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So my name is Andre Bright. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an executive coach. I do a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm an architect. I produce dance theater productions, and I'm an entrepreneur, qualifying as an associate certified coach with the International Coaching Federation at the moment. Which part of that is 100 hours of client coaching experience. So I'm well on that journey and I'm really enjoying it. But what I said earlier on, which I'll repeat now, is that some of the principles that I have learned as part of that journey is what I actually apply to myself when I'm coaching myself. And I realized this because of 2 things. First of all, is a bit of a story. So the reason why I went into coaching itself is I thought to myself, I wanted to do something where I could help others, right? So I put my hand up in this demonstration that was done on a webinar similar to this, but it was by the ICF. And it was an opportunity to be coached by one of the accredited coaches there. And it was only a 15-minute session, so it was really short, really quick. But in that time, it just changed my whole perspective on everything. Like it really brought clarity to me. And it actually was the beginning of what I'm doing now, which is part of my shift to move everything, all my income streams remote, and to do all these kind of stuff that I needed to do that I've been putting off for ages. And literally within that 15 minutes, it just gave me the drive I needed to put things into action. And I decided in that moment I wanted to be able to help people like that. And that's what I'm doing right now. So um, I I wanted to start this whole idea by saying that oh, a coach is your guide. I've got these 2 images right here, right? Yoda and Rafiki. Those are 2 of my favorite guides from like fictional characters. But really, the reason why it's there is because the coach is there is not to give you the answer, but to help you find it within yourself. That's one of the huge things that I found in the journey which meant that not only is the coach able to do that without necessarily knowing the answers that you're looking for, it also means that you can do it for yourself, right? So those things are what I'm going to teach you as we go on. So I have a question that I'm going to ask you all. Um, it's a what if question. And what if you could achieve the results that you want without paying bucks for it every time? What if you could change your circumstances without relying on people? What if you could achieve without being overwhelmed? What if you get paid what you're worth without selling out? And what if you could do the things you need without sacrificing the things you want? These are some of the things that have come up in my coaching journey so far that people have had problems with, had issues with. Sometimes people come and the reason why they pick up the phone or email or get in touch with a coach is some of these things, especially as creatives, right? Some of these questions are really huge ones that we have to tackle. So I'm here to tell you that you can. But before I do, I have a really quick exercise. So for those of you who are in the room, you should have access to the chat function. So um, Yes, Manny, what's up? Welcome. The question I'm going to ask you is, what could I coach myself through that would absolutely change my life right now? So I'm going to give you 1 minute in the chat to just answer that question. It could be something that is a burning desire for you right now. It could be something that has been kind of rolling around in your mind, something that you've wanted to do for a while but you haven't got around to yet, something that you don't know how to do, something that would just be a nice to have, anything like that. I'm going to give you a minute. I already gave you a few of my own, or the ones I've picked up through the coaching journey so far. If you have any problems, let me know. But I'm gonna let that leave that out there for people to write in there. So the question is, what could I coach myself through that would absolutely change my life? I'm guessing that the reason why you're here is that either you know me personally, or there is something that you would want to be able to coach yourself through, or you're just curious about what the coaching thing actually is. So I'm gonna leave that going for a while. So D has said gym, definitely, and that's quite a popular one for people to coach themselves through as well. And I think you generally, some people tend to do it themselves. Like January is a hot time for the gym and just those kind of like life-changing kind of like I want to regenerate myself kind of times. You've got business skills, health and well-being, 100%, and events planning, 100%, definitely. And there's going to be many, many more, right? So often when we have these blocks or these dreams or desires that we want to do, we often attempt to do this by ourselves, but then there might be some kind of roadblock or something else comes up, we get distracted for whatever reason, they don't end up happening. And then that's when we start to look for help, right? We go online, we start to look for people like myself who are coaches, we start to look for other people who have the same kind of desire as us. We start to do whatever we can. We've got other ones here, life and purpose, clarity. Clarity is a huge one. Clarity is a huge one. Just having clarity can give you the confidence to take that step. It's like the difference between walking in a field where it's completely covered in fog and you have no idea what's immediately in front of you to that fog being cleared away. And then all of a sudden you can see exactly where you're going. So you can keep them coming while I carry on the presentation. But thank you so much for those who have written it down and keep those things in your mind while I'm going through this. So I'm here to tell you that you can do all of those things. So today, what I'm going to cover in this webinar is three main things, right? So I'm going to give you a foundation of what coaching actually is, because there's a lot of confusion as to what the role of a coach is compared to other roles, and how it works. So I'm going to give you a few of the tips in that section as well. The three secrets for me are the three things that you need to look for when you're trying to coach yourself. And then the last part is a live demonstration for which I may need a volunteer. So I'm going to keep that in mind. I've asked you now is to have a volunteer. And what I'll do is I'll explain to you how it's going to work at that point. But if that's something you want to do, be ready to put your hand up. All right, so let's get it going. So the first question really is, what is coaching? That's the foundation of everything that we're here for, right? So some of you may have had coaching before, some of you may not have. But the first part I thought is looking at what coaching isn't. So this is like a little image that I put together. It's not going to be found anywhere else. This is just my understanding of what some of the different roles are. So coaching is something which takes you from the present and you're looking forwards. Your forwards being your goals, your aspirations, your dreams. It starts from where you are, and that's a really important key. And it does it by asking questions, and we'll come to that later on. The difference between that and mentoring or consulting is the idea of someone being where you're aiming to go and helping you work retrospectively backwards. So a mentor, for example, is someone who's going to help guide you forward, but they've been there, so they'll be able to see the roadblocks and tell you what those things are. A consultant is someone who's going to solve the problem for you because they have the skills already. If you're looking from where you are backwards, for me, that's counseling. So that's like you're experiencing this thing now, there's something holding you back, and you're looking backwards to find out where that problem might have come from. And then therapy is really rooted in the past. It's rooted in your belief systems, it's rooted in your traumas, it's rooted into anything that happened before in your past that is holding you back now. And so the reason why I'm having this, starting with this, is that I find for me, I have access to, or I've sought out all of these things as a holistic part to help me get to where I am at the moment. Coaching is a really significant part, but I also have mentors. I also have a counselor. I've also gone through therapy, and together it's helped me progress. But today we're focusing just on coaching. So what is that? Coaching, in a really simple equation, which I find really helpful, is performance is your potential minus your interference. Interference being your inner game and your outer game. The outer game is it was actually coined by a guy called Timothy Gallwey. And the outer game is what they use tennis as an image for this. So your outer game is you against your partner. Your inner game is you against yourself. So your fears, your doubts, your insecurities are your inner game. Your outer game, in terms of business or in terms of creativity or anything like that, it might be, do you have the resources? Do you have the networks? Do you have access to whatever you might need to do? And so as a coach, our role is to turn the interference into as close to zero as possible, or to get rid of it completely. Because the idea then is that getting rid of the interference means that your performance will equal your potential. That's what the coach is. So then, one of the really powerful things about coaches, and I mentioned this earlier on, and this is where, if you have a notepad, this is where you got to start writing these ones down, because there's a book called the Coaching Habit. This was like a really important book for me in my research, and it's actually like a relatively short book. So if you want to have a look at how to, it's designed for managers to coach their students, but it easily applies to self as well. And it has 7 key types of questions that you can ask yourself, and I use them on a daily. And later on in the live demonstration, I'll show you how to do that. But ultimately, there's 7 types of questions. There's Kickstarter questions, which is basically how you open up the space in a open-ended, curious way. There's the all question and what else. So after you get through a few of the options, you keep asking yourself what else. You keep trying to find out what other options there might be. There's a focus question, which is, what's the real issue? Especially if you're the kind of person, as creatives, our minds are in 15 different places at once. So the idea then is that, what is the real challenge? We try and boil it down to that one, especially if there's only one that you need to sort out. It can help deal with overwhelm and all that kind of thing. The foundation question is, what do you want? What do you actually want? I think this is a hidden gem, because I don't know about you all, but what I found from my journey so far is that a lot of us don't actually know what we actually want. And usually when we say what we think we want, it's either based on what we've seen or what is popular or anything like that. So the real question is getting to the root of what we actually want, what we need. The lazy question, they call it, is, how can I help? This one is designed for the managers to speak to their staff, for example. But I actually use it for myself in terms of, what do I actually need to do? What are the tasks that I need to do to close this gap? Then there's a strategic question, which for me is one of the most powerful questions that I can ask myself, is that if I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? The hardest part I found about being an entrepreneur or following dreams and all that kind of stuff is, it's easy when you're saying no to the things you don't want to do, but it's really difficult saying no to the things that you do actually want to do, but aren't taking you any closer to your goals. And so the last couple of questions here is the learning question, which is, what's most useful for you? So really quickly, just to get a little temperature in the room, if you can go, if you have access to the chat, just click Y if you are finding this useful so far, N if you're not finding it useful so far. We'll get to the Q&A session later on, so you can ask questions directly. but just so I can get a feel of what's happening in the room. Because for me, this was really useful. And this is something, like I said, I use on a daily. I use with myself. I find that now I'm actually using these types of questions, even when I speak it to friends and family, just because you can bring it into any kind of conversation, but they really dig deep. I think a lot of um, one of the things that I want to bring awareness to is that in the left-hand side of the screen here, it says questions rather than advice or instructions create awareness and responsibility, but well-placed, curious, non-judgmental, and open questions can create divergent thinking that will find the best answers for you. What that really means, and there's a couple of key things I want to put here, is non-judgmental. One of the things that we sometimes do that actually ends up holding us back is we have this idea of what is right or wrong, what is good or bad, and it ends up limiting our thinking in terms of what solutions we will actually come up with. I'll dig a little deeper into this later on because it links into a few other things. But again, through the coaching journey I've had so far, that's something I've seen coming up over and over again. This is wrong or this is right. And so I should not or would not or cannot pursue this thing. And that ends up meaning that we don't make a start on what could actually change our lives. So just keep those things in mind as we go through. So one of the things when I go into the demonstration later on is I'm going to use this grow method. It's probably my favorite method so far. There's loads of methods in terms of coaching. Pretty much there's about as many methods as there are people who coach. But the grow method is the one I use the most, probably. It starts with your goal. So the idea is to define it on different levels. What is your dream goal? Your North Star? What is your target? What do you actually want to achieve in life? So as a creative, what is your end goal? Like 30 years from now, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on stage? Do you want to have your own company? Do you want to be in this part of the world? Do you want to be helping other people? Do you want to be hosting awards? Do you want to build your own town? Whatever that might be. And then the reality is, where are you now? What do you need? What are your barriers? And then the options is what can you do? This is where the divergent thinking comes from. So the idea is take away the judgment, take away any limitations. If you were a deity and you could achieve anything you want, what could you possibly do? Those are your options. You start there, and then you find ways to tackle your barriers. And then the last part here is what will you do? What actions will you take? And that part is really important because what we sometimes do is, for example, it might come to, I mentioned January before because people would make their New Year's resolutions and they want to change their life and everything. What often happens is there's without the structure, you kind of start with what you might want, but you don't necessarily go into the tactical ways for you to get there. And then what ends up happening is that without, and we'll go through it a little bit later as well, without really looking at what could go wrong and planning for that, when we lose our motivation and when things get harder, for example, we stop and we lose it. And then years down the line, we start adding those same dreams back onto our list, and the same thing happens again, and the cycle continues. The grow method is really good at breaking that cycle, and we can do it for ourselves by asking the kind of questions that we saw from the last slide. So again, if there's anybody in there who's finding this useful, give me a Y for a yes, give me an N for a no, but then give me a question mark if you have a question. And if you have a question so far, just put it in the chat, and I'll try and answer it. Or I'll add it to the Q&A section towards the end. Okay, cool. A few yeses are coming in. And don't be bashful about it as well. If it's not being useful, put an N, capital N, you know what I mean? Let me know. Because for me, this is really important. This has really been really life-changing for me. But I want to make sure this is as useful for you as it was for me. So let's move on to the main part. This is why you're here, right? The three secrets. What I found with coaching and just generally trying to get myself from A to B is that there are three main things that are a barrier for me getting there. And I'm going to talk to you about them right now. And they're going to seem really simple. I've grouped them into a way that this is just the way my mind works. I've grouped them into a way that they work in three categories. And the reason why I do that is because we don't have time to go ad nauseum through every possibility that there might be that might hold you back from reaching your goals. But I guarantee that most of the things that you're going to be thinking about as you go through your coaching journey are going to fall under one of these three. So let's get that started. So the three are coaching yourself through what you won't do, coaching yourself through what you can't do, and coaching yourself through what you don't do. And I'm going to go through those individually in a moment, and you'll understand why there's a difference between those three, right? So the first secret is coaching yourself through what you won't do. This is actually when you don't have motivation at all, you don't want to. This might be something where you know it's good for you, but for some reason you just don't have a desire, right? So I think someone mentioned the gym earlier on, right? Many people have that desire, but they might find that they actually don't want to, straight up. And there might be certain things that might be creating that limit. One of them might be dissonance. So the idea is that there's something that you believe that disagrees with the thing you actually want to do. And so coaching can really help that. You can use those 7 types of questions to find the root of that. So for example, if I'm like, okay, I want to go to the gym, but I believe that people who have really good fitness are obnoxious, then I'm not going to have any actual desire to go to the gym, because then that would mean me becoming that thing that I don't agree with. So that means that I need to coach myself out of that mindset to be able to go to the gym. Does that make sense? Okay, brilliant. The next one might be the outcome. So the outcome is not big enough, or I don't really understand it, or I think someone mentioned earlier about clarity. It might be difficult to take the first step if you don't actually know where you're going, or don't know what, or don't have belief that your first step is going to make the impact that it needs to. So clarity is really important here. So if I decide, and I had this example here before, if I want to, let's continue with the gym idea, right? And I decide that the gym is my outcome. If the gym is not the outcome I want, then maybe I need to look at what's actually important to me and make that the outcome. Maybe the gym isn't the outcome. Maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's feeling attractive. Maybe it's having energy during my day. Maybe it's being able to play football with my son in the park. Maybe it's being able to run the marathon so that I can raise money for charity. You know, like once I start to focus on the outcome and make it big enough and something that I'm actually passionate about, that can help me create the desire. And all of that boils down to the last part, which is the things that you think, oh, let me move this out of the way. The things you think you have to do are not appealing to you. One of the ways to do this is that, and what I mean by that actually is that sometimes the steps we have to take, we don't fall in love with. Honestly, I might decide that I want to, be fit so I can run around with my child. But if I don't like the gym and I don't like lifting weights, then that's not going to be appealing to me. So maybe I need to have a look at what can make it appealing. Maybe I can create some rewards around it. There's a really good book called The Atomic Habits, which is really good at looking at how to make your habits appealing, how to make them sexy, how to make them something that you want to actually do. Because it's really important. Because one of the things that I found is, as a creative, for example, if my big goal is to win a competition, but I don't like training, I'm never going to get there. So I need to make the training exciting. I need to make it so that as I come from work, I have my bag on my back. So I have no reason not to go. I need to make it so that I'm also training with all my best friends. So it's not just about the training, it's about community as well. I need to make it so that it's a place where it's warm and it's not outside in the train station or something like that, right? So creating it so that it builds the desire, it creates the environment, which is a yes environment for me. Okay, so that's the first secret, right? Coaching yourself through what you won't do. Next one is coaching yourself through what you can't do. So this is when you don't have the means. So this is actually a really important one because and one of the reasons why I have a coach and why I coach myself through this is that it's easy to assume or just get to a stop and say, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources. So then you don't take the step, and then things don't change. But coaching is really good for me, and it's really changed the game for me, should we say, because it means that I come with a non-judgmental approach that I mentioned before, and it's an unlimited approach as well. So it's like it asks, what if? What if you did have the skills? What if you did have the money? What if you did have the network? And if you don't, how could you get those things? And it actually opens up your mind to actually look at that. Sometimes you might have the answer, sometimes you might not. But the question is, what if? Once you start with the actual real question, then you can actually seek the answers. And if you don't have the answers, you can look at the people around you who might do. So let's go into some of these. There is a skill or knowledge that you acquire to be able to achieve the thing that you want. In this case, because a lot of people, some people, should we say, may think that if I don't have this skill or knowledge, then that's it. But what you might do is if you, and I tend to coach other people through this, but this is actually what I've done for myself, is that I want to get to B, I need this kind of knowledge. So how can I do that? Okay, there might be a course. If it's a course, how much does it cost? How many hours a day or whatever? We're living in a world where you can download or you can have access to courses online for free as well. So what it sometimes means is that if it's something that's really important to you, creating the time, maybe an hour or 30 minutes a day over the course of a month, so that you can acquire the knowledge and skills to be able to do that thing. So for example, if I'm a dancer and I decide that I want to build a business around my art form, right? But I don't know anything about marketing, then I can say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna wake up 30 minutes earlier than normal, and every day or every weekday or whatever that might be, I'm gonna take 30 minutes to watch another video on marketing. In a month, you'll get to a space where you have enough knowledge to take those kind of actions. I think what sometimes happens is that we see the full picture as huge, and then we're too scared we don't break it down into manageable chunks, because when we do, we realize that it's actually something that's achievable. The money part, you believe you can't afford what it's worth. Two things. There's two parts of what I'm learning about money is, one, is that there's genuinely sometimes a situation where you don't have enough money in your bank account. That's a fact. Sometimes it can happen, right? But if you decide that it's something that you actually need or actually want, there might be payment plans. It might be a situation where you think to yourself, okay, maybe I can do some work in an extra job or extra resource that can generate money to be able to afford this. And it will only be for a finite period of time until I have enough money for this thing. The reason why I say this is someone said this to me recently, and I was like, yo, that's a really good point. They said they weren't even selling me something. They just gave me a figure for something that they do sell. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's a big number. And it's like, is it really? And he said, if I was to offer you a house for that price, would it be a big number? I was like, hell no, I'd go through hell and high water to be able to make that money. It's like, yes. So the problem is value. So it's what you value that thing at. If the price is anything above what you value it, then you just won't make the effort. All right. So sometimes we need to go through that. And again, it's looking back to what's on the other side of the actual product. It's not the gym you're looking for, it's your body, your health, your wellness, right? That is the price that you want to look at. And then network. There's a lot of ways around this as well. Asking yourself questions like, who do I know that can help me introduce myself to someone who I need to know? Who do I know who has the result, or who has gone through this before, who can help me? Who do I know, or where would the person who has this information be? Is another great question. Because, for example, if I wanted to if I want to start a festival, I would ask myself, where do people who run festivals go? What events would they attend? And I'll make sure I'm there and I'll network. So that's the second secret. I'm going to get to the third secret, and then I'm going to ask you another question just to make sure you are with me. I know I'm going through this quick. It's just because of time. The third secret is coaching yourself through what you don't do. Now, this is something that keeps coming up, right? So here's a situation. You know what to do. You could possibly do it, but for some reason, you just don't. Me, as in Andre, me, even me have gone through this so many times before. You know what the answers are. You know the theory. Like, for example, how many fitness and health and wellness things there are. We know we need to eat well, we need to sleep well, we need to exercise. Like all those things are basic things that we need to do for health, but we don't do it. Like then we have to ask ourselves a question. If it's something that we claim to really, really need or really, really want, and we know what to do, and we have everything we need to do it, we have to dig deeper and figure out what's beneath that. Often, just giving you a caveat, often the answer to this particular one may not actually be in coaching. For this one, you might have to go deep into your past to find out what belief systems you have created over time that have created a block. And sometimes that's where it might be. But some of the other two I've got here are something you can work on through coaching. The first one is fear, right? So what is it about it that has maybe given you a fear of success, fear of failure, or fear of change? You know, the unknown. If I'm going to start a business, for example, if I want to change the world and to do that, I need to start a business, but I've never done that before, I may actually be scared to do it. I'm, yes, I may not know what to do, but I could find out. Or I know some people who might have done it before, right? But what if it was to pop off? What if it was to be huge? And then all of a sudden, the question really is that I don't know how to handle millions. You know, I don't know how to handle like 10,000 people showing up at an event and selling it out. I don't know how to handle those things. Like, what if it was to go really well? What if it was to flop? What would it mean about me? Like, does it have a weighing of who I am as a person? Like all these kind of questions might be going through your mind, and you may not even realize it. These are things that might be happening subconsciously, right? Another question. Yes, definitely deep reflections. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Another one might be energy, right? So I know what to do, um, but I'm burnt out, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm tired. Coaching for me has been really good for this particular one, actually. So in this situation, it's like, okay, what is causing me to feel this way? What is on my plate right now? And what needs to be there and what doesn't? What can create space in my day? How am I using my day? Um, who can I delegate some of this stuff to? What is there that doesn't need to be there? What isn't serving my purpose, my overall purpose? All these kind of questions can help me create space for me to create energy. What is giving me energy? What is taking away energy? Who is giving me energy and who is taking away energy? All those kind of questions might come under that. And that comes with coaching as well. And then, of course, there's the insecurity question is that, especially if it's difficult to separate the things that happen from who you are, then if these are things are connected, and we mentioned this before, if success means I'm great and failure means I'm terrible, then that means that I have a lot riding on the success of this thing, especially if it's innately attached to my worth. And so those kind of questions need to be addressed as well. And again, going back to those 7 types of questions earlier on can really help you work through these ones. What might be at the bottom of all of this will be different for each one of you in this room. But trust me when I say it's a really good place to start. Like I said, if it gets to the point where you're going really far into the past or yeah, mainly really far into the past, then it might be start to become something else. But there's loads of material out there. There's therapy, there's all these kind of things, because that is the support of everything relies on. All right, so back to the chats. Any questions at the moment? You can just post them in there. If there's any questions, write them down. If this is useful, put a yes. If this isn't useful, put a no or Y or N. Brilliant. We're getting a few yeses in there. And yeah, as Nasha said before, it's deep reflections from the get-go. I always jump straight in. Sorry. I don't know any other gear. But yeah, like I said, hoping it's being valuable to you because genuinely these kind of things are what I use to coach myself at the moment. And I realized this recently actually when I was being coached by someone who said, Raw, I don't need to do anything. You're coaching yourself because I was so used to already by that point being reflective and taking the time out in my day to actually think about the productivity and the effectiveness and of the things that I do towards that goal. So definitely useful helping me reflect and ask myself a new set of questions. 100%. And all these questions that we're coming through are interchangeable, right? So, you might ask yourself one thing one day, and you might ask yourself another thing another day and find a different area of things that in your mind that you hadn't considered before. All right, brilliant. So let's move on just because of time. There's a bonus secret. Okay. And this is actually the point. I know this is going to sound really, really obvious, right? But this is actually the point where we focused a lot about basically if you're not doing the things. But the question is coaching yourself through what you do. Because once you actually do the actions and you start seeing the results, it's still not over. There's always more to do. There's more to look at. There's always growth. So the way I put it is I broke it down into these three things: evaluate, recalibrate, and celebrate. So evaluate is what did you measure, or maybe how did you measure? So was it a SMART goal that you can tick off the list? If I say get rich, then how do I know I've achieved it? What does rich mean? Is there a number? If I say teach 1,000 people how to do a boogaloo roll, then I know when I've achieved it, right? And how can I measure it? Because I can see their technique. I know how many workshops I've done and how many people have come to those workshops over the year, and I can add those numbers up so I can say, okay, I'm getting there now, right? And then I can evaluate maybe what did I do well, what could I have done better, or maybe how can I get to that goal quicker? So maybe if I've been doing it one-to-one, I might consider doing it in a group or in a class to reach more people, or I might be able to think to myself to do it online, and I can assume that each view might be a different person, so I'll be able to reach that goal quicker, right? So thinking about or coaching yourself through how we measure these things is really important, especially as creative. So whether it's music, whether it's dance, whether it's painting or anything like that, singing, the idea was like, what affected that age-old question, what does success look like to me? But then how can I measure it? How do I know where I get there? And then once you figure that out, then you can see what methods you can use to get there and evaluate your journey on the way. But you will have milestones on the way that you'll be able to complete, or maybe even beat the goal completely. Maybe you reach your goal and then you need a new one. That's when the recalibration happens. So then you decide what is your next goal or milestone or checkpoint. So you keep it going. So there's a few research studies that have been done recently, which basically say that once you reach your goal, there's actually only a small window of satisfaction before you actually need another goal to reach for. We as humans, we constantly need to be going, reaching for something, right? And that's one of the reasons why they kind of get you to create big goals, like huge goals that you can break down, because once you achieve the goals, you're done. and, and as people, we kind of don't want to get to that point. You want to keep having something to look forward to, and then celebrate. This is something even me myself I'm still working on, but it's to, as you achieve your goals, celebrate, do something, even if it's just putting your arms up in the air and waving them like you just don't care, or booking yourself into a spa day, or going to a party, or having a movie night and chillax night, or whatever it might be, like a little drink of bubbly, whatever it might be, having something to celebrate, something to mark the occasion, so that your mind gets used to being rewarded for reaching those targets. because the more it's rewarded, the more it'll want to go and reach more. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay, cool. All right. So I said earlier on that I would want for those of you who were here at the beginning, a volunteer. So if you are okay with me working with you for literally just like 5-10 minutes, I want you to put a yes in the chat, and I'm going to talk you through how to do it. Put in everything we've done so far into practice. And while that's happening, what I'll do is that I will effectively be that curious mind for you. So one of the things that often happens is that I guess the reason why, in a way, you kind of go for a coach or a personal trainer, yes, Phoenix, is that they will be able to ask you questions that you may not have come up with yourself, but there is power in the questions that you would ask yourself anyway, right? Okay, so Patrice, you good to come on? Come join me in the space.
Hello.
Hey, okay, wicked. So,
Can you see me? Because I've put my phone on charge, so
oh no, it's
I
cool. I can see kind of like half of an ear, but, but which is
best
all good.
part.
It's a great ear. But but yeah. So what I wanted to do, right, is I want you to imagine any particular thing that you might want to work through. I'll literally give you 1 minute. So that could be I don't know, it could be relationship, health, wellness, it could be money, it could be a particular problem or a challenge that you're facing right now. Maybe a challenge.
Okay,
So yeah. Do you have one in mind?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So you have this challenge in mind, right?
Hmm?
So is it something that you would be okay with sharing? Or is
Yeah,
it something, yeah? Okay,
yeah. I can
cool. Okay,
fine.
brilliant. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pretend to be your own mind, right? And
Right.
what we'll do is I'm gonna let you coach yourself, but then every now and again I will jump in and add a little something.
Oh
Yeah?
God, what have I agreed?
Don't worry, you'll be fine. Trust me, trust me. So I'll get you started. So maybe describe what the challenge is at the moment first.
The challenge is career change. So I love my job, but I'm looking towards the future.
Hmm.
And I'm also looking at how tiring that job is at the moment, and I'm ready for a new challenge. And I believe it's tiring because I've done it to death. I've kind of, as I've said to a couple of my friends, I've kind of nanny McFeed it. Like, yeah, what else is there to do here? You know,
Right.
uh, there are other interests in my life, other areas of interest that I've not really delved into.
Mm,
Um, and so it would be nice to have a new challenge and to learn and become a bit of a master at some other things that I'm interested in. But that's difficult because obviously we can't just jump off the hamster wheel and relax because who pays the bills? So that's where the challenge is. Um,
indeed.
in an ideal world, I'd take a year out, rest, recover from the job that I'm doing now, get
Hmm.
clarity, get a quiet mind, do the courses, and yeah. But yeah, that's kind of like an overview of what it is right now for me.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like there's a few things that are encompassed in that, right? So you mentioned about being tired.
Yeah.
So and you're not being challenged at the moment.
No.
Um Obviously it's
Nor
a sorry?
nor appreciated.
Nor appreciated.
Spoiled.
Okay.
Spoiled. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the idea of this transition into something that you do want to do, but then there
Yeah.
are certain barriers between that, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So, if we were to imagine this is a session, what is one thing that you would want to focus on? Like, what's the biggest part?
biggest part. What is the biggest part?
While you're thinking about that, sorry, the reason why I asked this question is um,
Mm,
sometimes there may be a whole bunch of different moving parts
yeah,
to a machine,
yeah.
right? And one of the things about a machine is that there's often what can I say? Not fragile parts, but bits which hold everything together. And so
Mhm.
sometimes by asking this question, you might find that there is one piece to this puzzle where if you could take that one piece away, everything else
Y-
doesn't seem as bad and it can seem more manageable. So the question is really like which part of that piece,
Yeah,
if you took away, would make the rest more manageable?
finances.
Finances. Okay.
Mm.
So then you would focus on that finances. So um the question then would be um what would be the desire for the finances?
That there would be enough for me to be able to slow down
Hmm.
and get myself to a healthy place where I can make that transition. Because
Okay.
if it was me, I'd be like, all right, see you later.
Yeah.
Have a little rest. On to the next thing, you know.
Right.
But obviously, we know that that's not realistic. So it's
Mm.
now looking at what I have done is gone part time,
Right.
given myself the flexibility to work one of those days agency, so I can decide can I sacrifice the money that week or not.
Okay.
Is the exact sacrifice.
Yeah.
Um, and then now the point I'm at is researching courses that are relevant, affordable, reputable, effective, recognized, all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. That's kind of where I am now. And looking at like what do I want my day to look like? What do I want my week to look like? Like at the moment I teach dance, I don't want to be necessarily running my body into the ground at 55.
Mm.
So where do I take that passion and what do I want to do with it? So they're the questions I've been asking myself and trying to get some answers to, really.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're coaching yourself already.
Mm-hmm.
So if and this is to everyone who's in the group, we do this a lot, just in general. We do this all the time, but I don't think we necessarily recognize it as this. So you asked some really good questions there. Um, that if you were to break them down one by one and really sit, because I know you do already, that you really sit with some of these and find a answer to some of these questions, and then break them down to into steps and take
Mm-hmm.
them. So like the only one I would maybe add there is what your number is. So you mentioned that you would need to have enough. So I might ask, what is enough? And knowing what that number is might help in terms of, for example, if enough was £500, my approach would be very different to if it was £5,000. Make sense?
Yeah.
So or
Mm-hmm.
50,000, for example. But yeah, so one of the things I would do then is I would go into one of those questions and just focus on that, like hone into it. So when I'm doing my self-coaching sessions, I would often start with a really big umbrella. And the idea is to get closer and closer and closer to something that is really small and tangible that I can do right now, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that would move the needle. So in your situation, you've already done this a few times, it sounds like. So you've started to look at courses, you've started to look at ways to increase your income, and you've started to take action on those. And in
Yeah.
this moment, you might find that there might be a period of time where it just needs time for some of these things to start kicking in terms of actually
Yeah.
turning into income, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even then, if you've done everything you can do for that particular goal, then you
Yeah.
move on to another one.
Right.
Especially if you've done ad nauseum, completely exhausted it. Because another thing that sometimes happens is we'll go so far down to something to the point where we can't actually do anymore, but we obsess over it still.
Right.
And then that's
Yeah.
where some of our energy can die as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100.
All right.
Yeah.
Just because of time, I'm gonna, if that's okay with you, kind of wrap that part up a little bit. But it was
Yeah.
just an example of the beautiful thing about that is you're already asking the same kind of questions that I would have asked you anyway. So
Mm.
you're a great example of this. But you can do the same thing with any topic, right? Let's say, for example,
Yeah.
uh I wanted to, I don't know, move house or move
Hmm.
country, right? Those same questions come for me. If I want to start
Yeah.
a festival, like I mentioned before, all those questions are exactly the same. And I would use the grow method. We started over, like I said, about what is the topic. And you told me about, I gave you time to break that down. We looked at the reality, which is basically where you said what you're experiencing right now. And then we looked at
Hmm.
what your options are, and you mentioned you're already doing these certain things. Then we looked at the will, which is the action. The only question that I would
Hmm.
have done now in a session with myself, for example, is what am I going to do today? I usually try and think to myself in terms of duration. So, what can I do in an hour, for example,
Right.
like right now?
Hmm.
What can I do in
This
a
is
week? Sorry?
well, it's my second thing. Seeing that you were running this seminar is my thing for today. That was my thing for today.
Boom.
That was my second thing. The first was looking for another course because there were bad reviews on the one that I saw before. So I
Right.
spent a bus journey. So I just spend that time researching things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear that. No, you're definitely on that journey. It's been wicked. But thank you so much for being a live demonstrator. It was brilliant. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. Getting
You
claps
too.
in the
Thank you.
audience as well.
Ah,
Definitely give her a round of applause in the chats and all that kind of stuff because it's not easy to come on screen, Them kind of thing there. It's wicked, it's wicked. But yeah, like I said, if that's useful, let me know in the chats as I go on to the last part. I'm just rounding up. So just because of time, we're coming to the end of it now. I just want to give space for any questions that you might have at this point. I know I've covered a whole lot of ground, and just to kind of go over it, we talked about what coaching is and what it isn't. I talked about the idea about powerful questions, the idea about us basically taking away the I, the limitations to make sure that our potential and our current performance meet each other. And then we looked at the three parts, which is what we won't do, what we can't do, and what we don't do. And then I looked at what we can do with what we do, right? So I know it's been a lot, but those are the things that we've covered. Are there any questions um, that you would like to look at for now? Yeah, sure, go for it. You can unmute yourself and then just jump in.
Mine is just feedback really. And I think feedback from my perspective is that it's definitely what you have presented was very interesting. I felt like as the seminar was going on, I can feel the resistance in my head with some of the questions, even though I'm quite a reflective person by nature. But
Mm,
but at the same time, I was also aware of those inner voices that were talking as well. So that's definitely, and I think that's a good thing because I think when you're talking about this, we want to be as uncomfortable as that experience is. You want to feel that kind of what does the inner voice, the resistance voice, sound like? Because essentially, some of those voices are kind of within the kind of questions that you were posing there, which is probably why
mm,
it was being activated. So yeah, that was just a little bit of feedback from me of my experience, and generally what you delivered, it was nice. It was really clear as well. So yeah,
yeah.
big yourself up.
Thank you, man. And it would be good to kind of, are you able to articulate what the resistance was? Was it just to the ideas or is it for yourself or?
Yeah, the resistance, it would have been at different parts and different aspects. So, for example, finance has definitely been one that I've kind of and I was having a chat with someone just beforehand about changing the perspective and mentality around finance. Also, things like being consistent. You know, I have a bit of a hang up with myself about being consistent, which is strange because in some aspects of my life, I can be very consistent, but in some aspects of my life, I can be quite inconsistent. And I think that would have come from experiences where maybe things like there's something that you touched on, which I think definitely resonates with me. The idea that if you're successful, it's a positive thing, you're good. And if something is deemed as unsuccessful, you're inadequate. And I realized that was something that was probably not drummed into me, but I, as a person, through my own experiences and my own interpretation, held on to that narrative, which then puts its own barriers in front of will take the risk, because actually rather than looking at the failures or the you highlighting certain aspects of yourself that ain't that great, rather than looking at it as just okay, realization, learning, move it forward. There's a whole complex and conversation that goes on in the head around that experience before I get over it. So it was just about reminders and highlighting parts of me that I already knew. And when I say already know, that I know that are already there, and maybe certain questions that were posed would, I don't know, ignite that a little bit, or just activate those narratives that another point in the day, that narrative is gone to bed because I'm thinking about something else, kind of thing.
Yeah. And thank you, man. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that, because I think I know I've experienced that for sure. So other people in the room may have as well. There sometimes comes a point where I'm glad you mentioned it, that some things feel that way and some things don't. And then the question is being aware of what it is about each one, and try and, going from there. Because then you might say, okay, I realize that it's actually only around this particular issue that I feel this way. And then you can focus on that and see what's behind it. And sometimes it might be something that's like, something that's really minor that might have happened years ago, or something you've noticed over time. And then it's realized that actually maybe I just need to change the narrative or change the environment. Maybe it's to change what I'm feeding myself around this particular issue. But you can only really do that when you take time to step back and be aware of what is happening there. One of the other things that I would have that I have another course which is looking at beliefs itself, and everyone has this. I think it's general common knowledge now. You've got the consequence, which is the experiences you're having, and then you have the thoughts you have about it influence your emotions, which influence your actions, which influence your results. But what influences our thoughts are our belief systems. And so what sometimes when it comes to some of these things, it means, and I mentioned this about therapy as well, is going back and figure out what is creating this belief system. And it's often years and years and years of little events or little experiences that confirm an idea. And what we need to do is figure out where that idea first came from. Because if we can take that piece out of the bottom of the castle, the whole thing will collapse. So I know what they were with me. There were certain ones, therapy taught me that there were certain ones that I thought were actually good traits, but which were based on a really shaky belief. But once I saw that for what it is and I took it away, I was able to actually take back the narrative and say, actually, I can create my own, because this was based off something I just didn't understand at the time. So I really appreciate you sharing that, man. Any other questions in the room? Just as we're rounding off, it's pretty much the end of the webinar, but I just wanted to give space if there's anything else. Okay, a couple in there saying, I've really enjoyed this. Thanks, you're welcome, and excellent work. Brilliant. I think the last thing I would say, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, is that sometimes, and I say, if I was to ask you a question, what has stopped you achieving that thing already? Like, this is a question that I had to really ask myself. And most of the time, when I've been coaching myself and I come down to the real thing, it's like, why haven't I been able to do this before? That is a huge question that often comes back. Now, sometimes it ties back to one of those 3 secrets that I mentioned before. Sometimes it might be something else. And so I want to leave you with that question. And for those of you who would want more help, for example, to help get through to whatever whatever goals or outcomes you want, I have an offer. Some of you in here already are on this, but it's basically to work with me as a coach. So what I do is, like I said, I'm an executive coach. So I offer 1-hour training sessions. You get a Google Doc of notes from our sessions. You get video of our conversations so you can go back and recap. We have check-ins in between, and I give you action lists that we work through together. And the idea is, it's similar to what you'd have with a personal trainer, for example. You get your accountability. I'll teach you techniques to help, things that help towards your goal setting itself. I give you individualized attention and focus and a space just for you, which is really important, especially for people who hold community spaces for other people. And I help you see results. Now, the actual fees for the sessions themselves, oh, I've gone backwards instead of forwards. The actual fees themselves per session is 250. And the packages that I will be doing is for 5 session blocks. But for today, for the people who are here, it's free. So if you want to be a part of that, I will put the link in the chat in a moment, but there's also a QR code. Let me get the link. Uno momento. And the idea is, oh, can you still see the screen, by the way? Okay, brilliant. So if you have another phone, you can have a look at that. Let me get the screen. For those of you who need to bounce, I completely understand. Those of you who want to take advantage of this offer, let me just put it in here. Where is my chat? I don't know why it's not being like that. It would have been great for me to have copied and pasted it. Let's put it in here. So we've got bear with me. There we go. All right, brilliant. So can everyone see that in the chat? Perfect. Thank you. All right. So thank you so much. I don't want to keep any more of your time. I'll keep this open for like another 10 minutes. Like I said, if you do want those 5 free sessions, then you can go to the form. All it is you have to fill in. I think it's less than 10 questions. I think it's basically what are your goals, what are your targets, and then what I'll do is I'll get back in touch with you and we'll sort out our first sessions. But genuinely speaking, what we've done today is enough for you to get started by yourself. The reason why I'm offering this as an addition is that I know for me, there are certain times when, even though I know what to do, there's still something that keeps holding me back. And I found that for me, it's really helpful to have someone outside of myself, someone on the exterior, to help me kind of almost sometimes remind me that these things are the things that I'm trying to do. It can be, the way my mind works is, like I said, it's on 1,000 different things at the same time. So I get distracted very easily. Sometimes I find myself overwhelmed. Sometimes I find myself taking on much more than I can. Sometimes I find myself doing things that aren't really serving me any purpose. And left to my own devices, I can find myself down a rabbit hole. So I'm giving this as an option to anyone who might need it, but I'm always here. So I'm Andre Bright. That's on all the socials. There's also No Starving Creatives is a initiative that I've just created actually, and this is going to be focused on helping bring creatives to financial independence. So I'm partnering with different organizations to be able to do that. But we're doing things like this. We're going to be offering courses, webinars, tools for people to be able to gain access to this kind of knowledge, which is actually available out there, but it might be out of our price range. It might be out of our knowledge or awareness. And it might be out of our comfort zone. So that's why I'm creating it. So like I said, I'm keeping this open at the moment. If you want to come off mute and talk, ask me any more questions, that's cool. If you need to go, that's cool. But I appreciate you all being here. I'm going to be on here for another 7 minutes and 22 seconds. But it's been wicked. Thank you all for coming.
Andre, thank you very much. I've made a note of what's going on here, and I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you soon. But thank you very much for a well presented session tonight. It was really, really good, and I took away more than I thought I would.
I appreciate that. What I'll do as well is I will send you all these slides. I think I should have your email addresses because you signed up. So I'll send you these slides so you can have a look, because I know it's a lot of information, but I really just want to get across everything that you need to be able to do this yourself. It can be so easy and so hard at the same time. I think for me anyway, this is just me being personally just open with you all because it's a safe space, is that the hardest part for me is being non-judgmental. For me, that's the hardest part. Thinking in a way that is completely open, because what can sometimes happen without me realizing it is I'm limiting, even the questions are limiting. So for example, I might ask myself, do I know anyone who can help? And it's so easy to just say no as a response to that question. Instead, nowadays, I'm training myself to say, which 3 people do I know? And that means I need to get to the number 3. So what might happen is I may not know who that person is off the top of my head. I might go onto network and say, do I know anyone who does this? Because what you often find is that there will be people in the network who can help, but we just don't even think about it, or we don't know they do that thing. And I could have easily found myself out of that range, right? So that for me is the biggest one. It's just mental, just limiting beliefs. But for someone else, it might be something else, you know? It might be the environment, you know? Sorry, go on.
Nothing. Sometimes it's about being scared to ask the question so that you don't have to then go on that journey as well. I've noticed that about me. Sometimes I just don't bother ask the question, you know, and I say I'll deal with it at another point, and I just don't ask.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I got to a stage, right? Because obviously I used to live in Reading, and I was that guy who, when I said I would do something, I would do it. And it sounds good, but it meant that they got to the point where there was so much responsibility in that people would take action just based on the words I said, not necessarily the actions that I'd done yet. And I had to really pull myself back to the point where now I've got to be really careful what I say because for myself as well, I put myself accountable, but also other people hold me accountable as if it's truth, which is a good place to be in a sense. But it also means that what ends up happening is if I say I'm going to do something and that time comes and I don't have the capacity or I don't have the energy or something else has happened at the time, I will still do it, you know, to my detriment. And so I've had to actually say, you know, in terms of priority, I think someone said it earlier on, my health needs to be at the top. You know, I need to be able to say no. That for me has been a biggest one. There was a question earlier on that is, if I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? And that was like a huge one that kept coming back. And that's why I said it was like a powerful one for me, because, you know, I may be given 12 really great things to do or opportunities, but if none of them take me towards my ultimate goal, I may be losing precious time and energy, which I can't put into what will take me there, you know? So yeah, man.
I hear you. I hear you, man. I hear you. But you know, it's good, and I think it's important that these questions, you know, whether that's within a structured session or not, they're definitely questions that should be just a matter of our lifestyle practice, I think.
100%. 100%. I speak from experience in that right now. It's definitely part of my lifestyle questions, man. And like I said, like you guys know, like I speak. Who is it? I was speaking to someone the other day, yeah, and she was like, "Man, this coaching thing is really working on you." I was like, "What you mean?" And I think the question was like, we were just having a normal conversation. I was like, "What does that mean for you?" You know, it was like such a, it's not something you generally say in
Well,
general
I think it
conversation.
only becomes a problem when they're going to ask, when they go in the shop and you say, how much is it? It's £5. But why is it that price? What does it mean? Then you know you've
Yeah.
got problems.
What is money really?
I think
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
when I listen to you speak, Andre, what I will say is, even though it might seem like it's something new, I think it's something you've been doing all along,
Yeah.
and education doing a course has just helped you to refine that skill and
Mm.
direct it and magnify it. Because you saying that just now, I feel like that's something you would have asked me 2 years ago.
This is
Anyway,
true. This is true.
so yeah, yeah. So it's putting it into a skill that you can name and
Yeah,
use professionally. But I think this is you anyway. Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. This
And I
is
think
definitely
it would be
it.
nice. Sorry, Phoenix. I think you were going to say something more. No, I think
No, no, no. Just doing the Phoenix thing where I repeat myself. You carry on.
no, because I was just going to say that I think it'd be nice for more people in this environment, like
Mm.
in this artist space, to have access to what it is you're doing, because I definitely think it's a lane that isn't getting tackled, and we do forget. We have this kind of there's a romantic idea of make some money in the scene, and I know that was definitely the narrative when diversity won. There was this energy
Mm,
around making money. Then the reality kicks in. What does it actually mean?
mm,
And
Yeah.
then what does it look like? How do you go about it? And um yeah, I just don't. I think there needs to be more conversations around that, because we're still stuck in the realm of win 2 battles, do 2 workshops, and we've made it, and hopefully get a
mm,
sponsorship if you're sick. But actually, there's a lot more to it than this. So
100%.
I
Mm.
think what you're offering can just at least begin to open some new questions in the scene. I don't want to take up any more time, but yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
No problem. And I think as well, it's just like going back to the divergent thinking I mentioned earlier on in one of the slides, is that, we ask our questions in such a way that we see lots of different options, as opposed to seeing it as one result and then how many ways to get to the one answer, right? Because it's not one answer for everyone. Everyone's got their own. So it's I think Dee's asking, I'm training with the Academy of Executive Coaches, and they're part of ICF, the International Coaching Federation. So I'm finished my diploma, and then I get registered onto the ICF by the end of the year. That's the idea, as an associate. And then after that, I'll be going for some of the other ones as well. A couple of things in here. Nyasha said, um, what's surfacing for you? Yeah, that's a really good one. Like, what are you feeling right now? All of those kind of things. But they're really powerful, They're really powerful, because sometimes the feeling behind it can tell you more than the thought sometimes. Like you can't necessarily put it into words. I feel sometimes the English language does us dirty. There's not a word for everything. Like if
Mm.
if if you're I did a post once before, and it was about culture, and the idea that, sorry, let me stop sharing screen now. So I can see your beautiful faces. Yeah. There's the thing about culture. And so what sometimes happens is that, people see people being animated and think that it's anger, when actually no, it's just us expressing ourselves. There might not be a word for this. you know
Yeah.
and sometimes it's similar to the arts and stuff. That's why we exist, right? So sometimes a picture paints 1,000 words, right? And it's the same with we've all been to a performance or something where our heart is in our throat and not a word has been said on stage, and it's a beautiful thing. But going back to what you're talking about, Alex, is how to translate that into value that people understand. And I think that for me is the journey at the moment when it comes to the creative arts industry, is how we can translate into value that the lay person will be able to understand. But yeah, Manny, how
Okay.
you doing?
Oh, yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, just been playing the observer and listening to everyone, and yeah, pretty much learning a lot. Yeah, apologies for my appearance. I know I look knackered. I've been at it since early this morning. Yeah, so like
No worries.
just great session, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question for you. Yes, I'm quite
Amazing.
interested. Yeah, so I'm just looking at like, so while you're working with different people, and of course quite a lot of things, like, pass through your peripherals, both the positives and the negatives, and yeah, and if, like, well, as sort of a, like, a coach who, like, cares from your approach, it's
Mm.
clear that you do care about the client. So how do you compartmentalize, and yeah, so, and, like, sort of set that boundaries and prevent, like, and stop yourself from making, their problem your problem, or taking it home, or taking it to bed at night? How do you make that differentiation? I'm quite curious.
That's a really good question, and something that I think that is a question that I've had to ask myself even before I really started this coaching journey, because I invest a lot in the people around me, my network. So it's very easy to bestow other people's issues onto your own, and it can be overwhelming. And so that can actually be another issue that can make something feel overwhelming, when, especially if you're an empath, for example, you may be fine, but if you're taking on everyone else's issues, that can be overwhelming. For me personally, there's little things I do. I have to have a period of time before and after each session where I can get myself into the mindset and emotional space to be able to hold space for somebody else, and also come out of that space. Sometimes that buffer can just be 5, 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll need a good couple of hours, maybe even a day, if it was something really heavy, but I have to process it for myself as well. Meditation helps, and just having that kind of like stillness to actually sit and think, okay, what am I feeling as a result of that? What am I taking into the next phase? What did I learn from that situation? And not running away from it. I think I used to try and do that and just be like, nah, let me just go to a party and that. Like, everything will be blessed, but it's not, because if I don't actually face it, then it will just come back the next day. This is just me speaking for myself that I've noticed. So I would really have to sit with it, similar to a therapy session. The idea is that you sit through whatever the experience is, and you let the emotions and the thoughts and feelings come and pass through you like a vessel. Like if I'm in a situation, there's like a block on their side, I feel it. you know if there's like excitement or jubilation because they've figured out something or had a eureka moment, I feel it. But as I come out of that space, I need to come back to Andre time, and that will involve, like I said before, um, taking my time and going through that. Sometimes it's going for a walk. Sometimes it's just sitting in silence. Sometimes it's having some food, or just space for myself before I do anything else. But I found that really, really useful. One of the things I realize now is why coaches have a gap in between sessions. When I first started, I thought I could just finish at 6 and start at 6. You know, no, no, no. It don't. It in a run, like, it doesn't. It just does not work like that. Even a good session, I need time to actually decompress for myself. So I don't. That's a long way of answering your question, but for me, that's how it works. What do you do?
Um, yeah, that's a very, very good question. To be honest, I think it just depends on how heavy it is. When it's super, super heavy, I tend to like, have a therapy session myself.
Yeah.
When it's super, super heavy, especially when you're working with a lot of young people, and so um you might come across a certain safeguarding related issue that you're not exactly happy with. And it affects you a lot, especially when you really, really care about, like, the young person and what they're going through. So sometimes you tend to, take that on, and it can be a little bit heavy. So I totally resonate with everything you said, which is like, I'm having that break in between, and just it's almost like you're rebooting to prepare yourself for the next person, sort of.
Yeah.
And so as bad as it sounds, it's always good to take a moment to recharge, because it's almost like everyone else is biting a chunk out of you, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And you need to replenish. Like, that's just what it is, like, because they're coming to you with all these problems. Like, you're an outlet for everyone else, but but you also need an outlet yourself, like, because at the end of the day, um that is thing is super important. Yeah, thanks, Phoenix. See you later. It's just super, super, super important to just sort of have that outlet. A lot of things, you said tonight resonated with me as well. Like when you talked about like bringing out like half an hour in a day to sort of like get some things done. So because I remember one of the things that I really had, like, that I really felt like I didn't have the time for, was reading, right? I love reading, but I just could never find time for it. I just could never find time for it. And then what I started doing, like, it would take me like nearly a whole year to like finish a book. But what I started doing was like, I would, wake up in the morning and read for like 20 minutes to half an hour, and I started finishing books a lot quicker than that. So I started finishing it a lot quicker, so like doing it every day. Within a couple of weeks I finished the book. It's just like, it's just nice to just have that constant practice. So but yeah, it has been a really, really useful session, and just being able to, like, share that space with everyone else, like, because sometimes it feels like a bit of a lonely journey when you're just caught up in the doing part of it. Like, you're just constantly doing. But when you take a step back and reflect and share the space with everyone else, like, you also realize that, you know what, there are other people in the same boat as well, and like, we're all just trying to get through. So yeah, great stuff, man.
Thank you. And yeah, there's a lot you mentioned as well, just to kind of like close the space, because one of the things that I hear a lot is it's the journey, not the destination, right? So what I've found that's really important about that thing that is missing from the rhetoric that is shared is that you actually have to fall in love with the activities. So for example, if I want to have a good physique, I've got to be in love with eating well. I've got to make that a relationship that I have for myself as a daily thing, So in your case, it's not necessarily falling in love with the knowledge you get at the end of reading a book, but just the idea of reading, you got to really enjoy. And then when you really do that, then it doesn't matter if it's an hour or 15 minutes even that you spend reading, it's going to be more than zero. So it's, for me, it's been a really big thing, but I'm really glad you use different ways to look after yourself when it comes to coaching, because coaches need coaches as well. Therapists need therapists, like the whole
Doctors need
thing. Like,
doctors.
yeah, literally, they all do, and we forget about that. My mom is a really good listener, but she needs people to listen to her too. So it's really important to, like you said, make sure you're feeding into yourself to recharge, because otherwise there's going to be nothing left to give.
Yeah, of
And
course.
that's where the real problems kick off for
Can't
everyone.
give what you don't have, right?
Exactly. But listen,
But
thank you so much, Manny. Thank you so much, everyone who's in the room. Thank you for making it. Hope it's been valuable for you. I'm going to put this recording down and send you that plus some of the slides and stuff from today, so you have something there.
Yeah.
You can get in touch with me once I've emailed you, so you have it there. And just thank you so much. It's been wicked. So hopefully see you again
Okay.
soon.
No worries. Take care,
Have a good
everyone.
night.
Have a good night. All right.